The views of this program are not necessarily the views of KJLL Radio, its management, or its sponsors. The host is solely responsible for its content. Enjoy.
Brother Kenny Powell on the drums and Brother Larry McDonald on the bottom.
On a spiritual mission given to me by Woody Shaw, Son Ship, and Billy Higgins, this is the Jake Feinberg program on a mission to put jazz music back into the ears of the youth in this country so that they recognize their cultural heritage. And I do that through introducing legendary musicians. My guest today was born in Philadelphia. I just was there, the brotherly city of love, as I call it. Lew Tabackin has become an international phenomenon. He developed during a time when opportunities existed all over the place, in small and big clubs, affordable prices, AM radio, the Carnegies, Van Gelder Studios, and some divine province. Playing with Donald Byrd, Elvin Jones, John Hurd, Billy Higgins, and of course his wife, pianist Toshiko Akiyoshi. They have combined and collaborated on many efforts, trying to spread good music throughout the world. Lew Tabackin, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Oh, nice to be here, Jake.
You know, I got two stories to tell you. One that I already shared with you, but not my audience. I was out at Gil Goldstein's house for a 4th of July spectacular, and I ran into your Toshiko's daughter Monday, and she did a beautiful rendition of Paul Simon's America. She sang vocals and played flute, and it was so funny that, you know, when she told me that story, because I said I'm going to have Lew on the program, you know, and it was a beautiful thing.
How was my grandson? Did you see him?
What was he doing?
He was playing the trumpet.
Oh, that's right. Was it the trumpet? Or I thought it was like a flugelhorn or something.
It was a trumpet, and he was making his debut playing with Gil.
You know, man, that is cool. I forgot. And he ripped it up. I forget what tune they did. I think they did...
He played Saints Go Marching In.
Exactly. I was going to say New Orleans tune. He was great. I have it on my own. I have it on video. The other
very good. Yeah.
I wanted to tell you the other thing, and because I've been on this this mission, I was unable to get a hold of him. Professor Haskell from the University of Arizona.
Jeff Haskell.
Jeff Haskell. When I've talked to him about my mission and my goals for my show, and when he realized that I was a madman, he said, when I told him that I was going to have you on, he paused for a minute, long pause, and he said, I grew up with Lew. And we were going to originally have him come in the studio and play a joke on you. And he was going to open up the show. But maybe we can start there, man. Why don't you talk a little bit about your relationship with Professor Haskell?
Well, I don't think I grew up with him. He was from the more privileged part of Philadelphia area. I grew up in the
South Philly.
I was a little bit of a distance between us, but I did know him. in fact, we were in a jazz contest way back in about maybe 59 or something like that. Anyway, it was some kind of one of these things that, you know, there's like a jazz contest, and if you win, you move on to the next round. Well, my group came in last.
You call that a battle of the bands, I think.
It was college, like a college student.
It was like a lab band thing.
No, it was small groups.
Small groups.
So the group that I played in, we were trying to play like all this Coltrane stuff. And Haskell was playing all this quasi West Coast 1950 stuff where people really liked it, and he did it, and he scat sang and all this stuff. And my group was too far out for the room. We came in last.
Yeah.
They came in first. But however, what happened is I wound up getting a gig out of it. There was a well-known piano player in Philly at the time, Bernard Payfair. He was from France, and he was a high-profile guy. He hired me to do a concert, and he said, "I didn't like your band, but I like." So that's how I met.
Wait, hold on. He said, "I didn't like your band, but I liked your playing." Is that what he said?
He thought I had some.
Yeah, I think he knew what he was. He knew what he was doing.
So that's how I met Jeff, and see him once in a while. In fact, I was out there a long time ago. I did something with his band at the school, and then about 10 years ago, I did something with him for the Jazz Society.
I'll tell you, Lew. I mean, we're down here. Arizona used to have and you know this because you did it. But I mean, it was there was it was a maverick state. You know what I'm saying? But they were independent, and they might wear their gun on their holsters, but they still respected the arts and the beauty of jazz. And Jeff Haskell represents the remaining vestiges of that, and there's still people in this town. And I got to tell you, I'll do whatever I can to bring you back here to collaborate with your long time.
I remember Jeff did a really good, I was very impressed with how well he did his ensemble years ago. He's very together. So when you see him, say hello.
I absolutely will, my friend. So let's get to it. I mean, when you went to the Philadelphia Conservatory, there were only classical curriculums at that point? Was there any type of jazz curriculum available?
No, there were no jazz curriculums, and basically, when I went to school, I didn't want to go, but the parents said, "Oh, you have to go," and I got a scholarship, but I wasn't interested. I was just trying to play jazz, and I would go out and play as much as I could, and I had to major in flute because there was no other program, and I wasn't serious. I basically survived 4 years and immediately got drafted into the Army. So that's what happened with all of that. But there weren't many jazz programs in schools at that time. I think the only one that might have existed at that time might have been North Texas, but there wasn't. And there might have been one shortly after that in Indiana, but jazz education was not prevalent.
And how? I guess there's several questions I have, but how did jazz curriculums? Who was instrumental in writing curriculums and getting it into schools?
I really don't know. To be 100% honest,
yes, I want you to be honest.
I'm not a big promoter of jazz education.
Go ahead.
Because basically, jazz education became an industry of itself. Became creating something that was not necessary, because supply and demand didn't dictate that we have so many young players who can't get a gig or are overqualified, or who what's the right word, overachieve.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost an unnatural situation.
Absolutely.
Jazz appreciation is important. That should be like what you're talking about. That should be done in the schools. But the jazz education thing was set up to fill the gap because there weren't many bands going out. There weren't any apprenticeship situations. So the jazz education thing, was supposed to fill that gap and create either ensembles to play with, peers to play with. But I don't know. It got too big, and it became an industry, and people writing all kinds of jazz methodology, jazz aids, all this stuff, and it became something where it became more of a income for educators, and I don't think there was a necessity. The people that are, the players that are going to play good are going to play good.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They don't have to go to school for 4 years. And anyway, that's
were you possibly a fly on the wall of my interview with John Hurd yesterday? Because that's exactly what he said. And John is such a classic guy because he doesn't take anything from anybody. And he just said the bottom line is, I want people, to what I remember growing up listening to music, was foot stomping music. It was booty shaking music. And you just got up and played music. And if you wanted to play with people, you played, but you developed your own sound that way. That's how you develop.
Well, the problem with education is you can't, it's hard to, and education should create the questions, not the answers. So if someone comes to me and says, how can I get from point A to point B? I say, well, I can show you, but you only repeat what I do. I want you to find your own way to get from A to B. So school doesn't have that kind of flexibility. So everything becomes, you have a cookie cutter situation, and which is not what jazz is all about. So again, there are some really good educators. I think the point is that if you have a really good teacher and you have some really educators that know what they're doing, like I remember my Haskell experience was positive. So if you have good educators, it can be a very positive thing. But that whole jazz education industry got a little bit out of hand, and it got to be too powerful.
It's just beautifully said. We're talking with Lew Tabackin.
I remember.
Go ahead.
I remember when I left it. I used to play on the Tonight Show, and I left the Tonight Show because I didn't want to do any commercial work anymore. Gary Foster recommended me for a summer program, at a jazz camp or some jazz thing, which I really didn't have eyes to do. But the guy called me and he said, "What is your degree?" I said, "Well, I did have a degree, but I only had a bachelor's degree." "Oh, that's not. You have to have at least a master's degree." I said, "Well, what did Dizzy have? What did Bird have? What kind of degrees did they have?" I said, "It's really ludicrous, that whole concept." And so, that there's something distasteful about that whole system. There have been some programs where they brought in wonderful, I think Max Roach was teaching at, I think it was Amherst program, and here in New York they have a new school. Most of the educators are professional musicians, working musicians. So some of the programs are good. Kids come from all over the world, and they get to study with and be mentored by real players. And then they're in New York City. They can go out and jam and play. So there are. Don't get me wrong. It's not a waste, but there are some good educational situations. But that behemoth jazz education system got, to me, a little bit vanilla, a little bit, I don't know, losing the point, missing the point.
Yeah, what you're saying is that it took away from the indigenous qualities of just playing music, and it became this very, you can have this kind of sound, or there's a book written by, specifically for this kind of jazz instrument. And what about I guess the point is, what about the students' creative thinking? The idea that they want to develop their own sound. I was talking to Mike Longo, maybe a few weeks ago, and he talked about, and I heard you say it a few minutes ago. You talked about supply and demand, and the idea that there's more at this point in our trajectory of music here in our country, not internationally, but in our country. You have a situation where there's just a lot of students being cranked out because of the industry, and not enough places for all these guys to get out and create expressively. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, there's now it's become like a fine line between jazz music and entertainment music, and so you have young people being prepared to cover all the essential qualities to become a star. So all of a sudden, you have to know what to say on the bandstand. and what to wear, how to look good, how to, it becomes like theater. And that's like, to me, there's something unnatural about it, but that's probably a generational thing. But basically, you learn to play. If you're interested if you really want to play, check out the history of your music. You work really hard. You try to meet and pick the brains of your heroes. And I mean, when I moved to New York, which was in '65. And I'd be lucky enough to get a gig if I played at the Vanguard, say with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis Band. I look up and there's, you never know who would be there. Like Miles would be there, Sonny Rollins would be there. It's
wow.
So you're really
Beautiful.
under pressure. You're under pressure to not only play well, but not play like the guy that's there checking you out.
It was the headhunter mentality. Well,
it's just the fact that you feel a responsibility every time you play to try to play something meaningful, and that's very important. And now it's not quite like that. You go to a club and it's a more formal experience. Just like you mentioned earlier, it costs so much money to go to a club now. So if a couple people want to go someplace, it's a big deal. So everything would become more formal. It's not it's not so loose and community like it used to be.
Spontaneous too.
Yeah, you never know what would happen. Somebody could come in and sit in, and that could happen. Now that's a rare occurrence.
Lew, I'm spinning right now. So you come back from the Army, you went to New York. And you were at that point you just were trying to get your horn and flute into every club possible. How did that work when you first got there?
I mean, basically, I'm not that aggressive. So I mean, I had to force myself to go out because I figure if I don't go out and expose myself for better or for worse, I'll get nowhere fast. I may as well stay in Philadelphia. So first night I was in New York. I went to a place called the Dom on St. Mark's Place, and I had met some. When I was in the Army, I got to play a little bit with. I used to sit in with Tal Farlow, had a group with Don Friedman, and Don told me, "Say, come to New York, and when you come to New York, check this place out. You can sit in." So I went there, and I walked over to Tony Scott, and I said. I like to play. He said, "Well, who are you, man? I can't let everybody play." I said, "Well, Don Freeman suggested." He said, I could play." So I got up on the bandstand, and he said, "Oh, let me see what you can do." And I'm looking in front, and there's like a bunch of guys sitting there, and I recognized Kenny Dorham.
Oh my God!
And they're standing there. And I'm playing, and like I can hear them commenting as I'm playing, like it's it sounds like he practices a lot, shit like that. So I mean, it was so fun. So I passed the audition. So anyway, I could go there and play. And Philly Joe was usually the drummer at the time, and so Eddie Marshall, Philly Joe, and no, it was kind of good. You get to meet some people, and one thing leads to another, and little opportunities present themselves. I mean, it's but you have to expose yourself, and that's part of the situation.
Right, and I think it's also the only way you're going to grow as an individual. And I'm learning this as I'm on this journey is that you have to do things that you're not comfortable with in order to evolve.
Yeah, I mean, like if I followed my natural instinct, I'd stay home and or whatever, or just not put myself out there because it's like stressful in a way, because you have to try to prove yourself, and it's not, But after you get into it and you feel more comfortable, and you start meeting other people and your peers and older people, whatever, one thing leads to another, and I had a lot of good experiences came out of that situation. You never know. I got a phone call to join a quote unquote resurrected Cab Calloway band, which was weird. I'm a 25-year-old white guy, and I go to the dressing room, and there are all these older black guys. One guy was on the floor doing push-ups. Turned out to be Eddie Bearfield, who became an important person in my life, and it was, I said, why? How did I get this gig? I mean, but it was now that's an education. I mean, that's 4 years. That's worth a lot more than 4 years in jazz education.
Exactly, because it was you were in the trenches with these guys, and you were learning.
I was the guys that had been through the music of the late 20s and 30s, 40s, and that, I mean, it was so natural to be in that situation. I felt like, wow, now I can just play the way I feel. And like before that, the couple bands that I played in were like white bands, and you had to play like really, like very sterile. And here all of a sudden, I just follow the lead alto player. I just try to match his sound, and anyway, there were all these experiences just popped up, and I had an earlier interview today for another situation, and I remember sitting in with Elvin Jones, and Joe Farrell was the tenor player at the time, and Elvin said, well, when you can't do it, send this guy in. So I started subbing for Joe, and I remember...
Was it Paul Chambers on bass?
Who?
Who was Paul Chambers on? Who was on bass?
No. The most interesting one was when what's his name? The great bass player, one of the great bass players of all time.
Bob Crenshaw?
No, way before that.
Way before.
He played with Monk and a Chicago guy.
It's okay. The point is that you.
Well, anyway, yeah. I mean, it was a scary situation. Wilbur Ware.
Like
Wilbur Ware is one of the great musicians of all time, and playing in that situation as a young guy who was young and stupid, it was kind of really actually spoiled me in a way. And those are the things that happen when you force yourself to go out there and try to expose yourself, for better or for worse. Sometimes somebody hears something that they like in what you do, even though you might not think that you're doing that great. So I mean, I had all those experiences, and I remember hanging out at there's a bar in New York called Jim and Andy's. It's a musician's bar, and I was hanging out there one night, and Zoot Sims was there, and he was feeling no pain. He was having a great time, and he said, "Hey, man, Clark's rehearsing this band, and I don't feel like doing it. Why don't you do it?" So I would do it, and every Wednesday I would show up at the same place, same time, and same thing would happen. He would. So I'm rehearsing with this all-star band.
Lew, we're going to go to save this. I want you to save the story because I don't want you to rush. We're going to go to a hard break. Coming back with Lew Tabackin on the other end. Jake Feinberg Show.
CNN Radio, I'm Shelby Lynn. No deal yet on raising the debt ceiling before the looming deadline. Internal negotiations are underway at the White House, and Republicans say other meetings have occurred as well, but so far no progress. Resign or you're fired. That's the ultimatum to almost 200 Atlanta public school educators tied to one of the largest cheating scandals in U.S. history. School district spokesman Keith Bromery says interim super Earl Davis wants to change the way educators operate.
He's also establishing mandatory annual ethics training for all employees that you have to go through. That will likely be an electronic course of which there's an assessment or a test at the end.
Educators at 44 schools in Atlanta erased wrong answers on key standardized tests and filled in the right answers for years. President Obama met with exiled Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, for about 45 minutes in a closed-door session at the White House today. The most trusted name in news, this is CNN Radio.
Hey everybody, Jay Farner here, and I'd like to introduce the Yorgage from Quicken Loans. That's right, the Yorgage. Our Yorgage is better than a traditional mortgage because it conforms to your goals. In fact, it's the only fixed-rate home loan that allows you to custom design a term that works best for you, anywhere between 8 to 30 years. So give Quicken Loans a call today at 800-970-2611 or go to quickenloans.com.
Other restrictions may apply. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. Nationwide licensing number 3030.
Here's another question from the Geico Savings Mailbag.
Sam from Provo writes, how come a slim chance and a fat chance mean the same thing, but a wise man and a wise guy are opposites?
Oh, it's a peculiar mystery indeed. Sort of like how Geico's website is geico.com, not geico.ridiculously-simple-savings or geico.pay-your-bill from the comfort of your computer. Both those names would make a lot more sense.
Wow, you are a wise man, Gecko, man.
For a free rate quote, visit geico.com to see how much you could save. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The last thing I need carpooling this lively bunch is a dead battery. The Sears Blue Automotive Crew offers to check my battery before there's a problem, so I feel confident my car will start every time.
Through July 30th, save on all Goodyear tires and receive up to $80 after mail-in rebate with a purchase of 4. Special financing available. And get a $21.99 oil change with coupon and no shop fees. Plus, automotive batteries are as low as $49.98. Sears Auto Center. Exclusions apply. See store for details.
Could switching to Geico really save you 15% or more on car insurance? If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around, does it make a noise? Yep.
Be like the 4 million who switched to Geico last year, and you too could start saving money. For a free rate quote, visit geico.com to see how much you could save. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. Every Friday night I get takeout from Bai Tong Restaurant, which serves Tucson's most authentic Thai cuisine. Pad Thais, fresh vegetables, and spicy Penang curry are my personal favorites, but every meal is sumptuous and cooked to order. Located at 4853 East Speedway Boulevard, Bai Tong serves compelling and affordable lunch specials as well as a full dinner menu. Bai Tong has ingratiated itself with the community by providing a peaceful environment to enjoy a meal with friends and family. Open weekdays for lunch 11 to 3, 5 to 9:30 for dinner Sunday to Thursday, until 10 on Friday and Saturday. So come down to Bai Tong Restaurant at 4853 East Speedway Boulevard to experience a taste of Thailand. Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. One of the first things I wanted to do when I moved to Tucson was find authentic Chinese cuisine. After a tip from the Chinese Student Association, I headed over to Badar Chinese Restaurant. Well, it's been 7 years and I have never looked back. Located at 7321 East Broadway Boulevard, Badar has been a family-run operation since 1992. The award-winning chef produces succulent dishes from sizzling ginger chicken to salt and pepper shrimp. The thing that separates Badar from the rest is that the chef procures ancient oriental dishes with the exotic island flair of Taiwan. Most importantly, there are no gimmicks or razzle-dazzle at Badar. You won't find any flat-screen TVs or karaoke machines. Badar is a place to go enjoy good food and spend time with your family. It exudes peace and tranquility after a long week of work. So come down and check out Badar Chinese Restaurant. Hong Hao Chu. It's that good. When Coffee Times first opened, many wondered how this standalone coffee hut could survive among the beasts of Java lore. But some 10 years later, the answer is a resounding yes. Located at 3401 East Speedway Boulevard, Coffee Times specializes in many different drinks from mocha fraps to lattes to my personal favorite, the Ice Power Coffee. The best part about Coffee Times is their convenient two-way drive-thru, lunch menu, and supreme service. Not to mention their weekly special. The next time you're in the area, head over to Coffee Times on Speedway between Alberton and Country Club. It will definitely kickstart your day. Folks, this is Jake Feinberg. Being a father, I know there is nothing more important than your child's health. And nobody is more dedicated to children's health in Southern Arizona than Dwayne Dyson. Dr. Dyson is Tucson's finest pediatrician and has devoted much of his professional career to improving the lives of children. Located at 4530 East Camp Fort Lowell, Dr. Dyson's resume speaks for itself. After doing his undergraduate work at Cal Berkeley, his schooling took him to Morehouse School of Medicine, where he mentored young adolescents about the need for pediatric physicians in Atlanta, and worked extensively with infants at the Texas Children's Hospital. The special thing about Dr. Dyson is that while his in-house care is exceptional, he also prepares families about what to expect once they leave the office. Dr. Dyson provides comprehensive and honest analysis for all of his patients. Dr. Dyson and his family live and work in Tucson because he knows how vibrant and diverse the community is. He is committed to procuring a robust family health center that can instill trust and alleviate the concerns of parents. Like I said, his resume speaks for itself. For more information, check out DysonPediatrics.com. Welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show, everybody. We're joined here today by legendary musician Lew Tabackin. Lew, welcome back.
Okay, now that you got me hungry and ready to switch to Geico, continue.
Hey, listen, we got a little bit more time. Now, let's get to it. So Zoot was in a good mood, and take it from there.
Well, basically, Zoot was he wasn't crazy about playing in a big band, and anyway, so I would show up every Wednesday at Jim and Andy's, and Zoot would send me in to sub for him at Clark's All-Star Band, and finally Phil Wood said, I don't think Zoot wants to do it, and so you may as well do it. So I was the only All-Star in this band. So that's how, all these little interactions happen, and so New York was a great place to be. It was a certain kind of pressure, but the pressure was good. It forced you to try to play the best you could.
How did you how much money did you would you walk away with on a given night? And you were able to live in New York and sort of I mean, that's the problem. What I see, like artists today, you can't live in these urban environments because everything's so out of the cost of living is so high.
Well, it was. I made about $4,000 a year.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God!
Yeah, I would make I would do gigs. I'd do gigs like with Joe Henderson and a few other bands. Come up with $5.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I had my own gig. I was a leader. I played 6 nights a week in a club called the La Boheme around 1967. I made $5 a night, which comes to $30 a week. And even then, it was impossible to survive that way. But the opportunity to play every night was a great drummer on the gig, Jimmy Lovelace, and I had to find bass players to play for $5, which was an interesting proposition. But I would play there, and then when my money ran out, I'd have to do something. I'd have to do maybe a Broadway show sub or something to make up enough money to save up enough money to go back. But those are the things you had to do. But nowadays, it's just totally amazing because the cost of living in New York is crazy. Just to get an apartment, so kids have to come in and they have to, 2 or 3 of them, one place, and there's so many young musicians coming in who work for almost nothing that there aren't many gigs that can sustain people. So it's a tough time. But the good part of it is that only people who really want to do it will put up with it. So the dilettantes will not stick around. So it kind of weeds out the people who are not really serious.
Lew, it's so good. This is why I do this show, because what winds up happening is I start listening to the guys, your music, and then I love it so much that I say, boy, anybody that is that's playing like this, I got to know who they are as people. And you are the most non-elite person around, and I love that attitude. And I think it's such an important part of life. I mean, I was talking to Chris, my board op, in the middle of the break, and it's just, just this idea that someone would call you and be like, what kind of degree do you have? And you're like, well, I got a bachelor's, but what does it matter? That's really the issue. It's like, who cares about the degree? What have you actually created?
That's stupid. The good news, the good news that there are some places where they don't really care about it.
Can you talk a little bit about those places? I really want to find these places.
Well, in the East Coast, I think more so. They have, again, I mentioned the New School, and There's William Patterson College. They produce a lot of good players, and usually the head of the department is like I think the head now is Mulgrew Miller.
Wow.
Before that was...
That's William Patterson. That's in New Jersey?
Yeah, William Patterson College in New Jersey. And then Rutgers, there's some people. So I think it's, there's some institutions that are cool, but basically, I don't know. I have a couple proteges, and I'm kind of a little bit disappointed because one of them, very talented, and I spent 3 years with him developing his, his playing without charge, and he got insecure and he got a degree in nursing, so he has something to fall back on. And another one is studying mathematics. So it's kind of sad in a way that people feel that they have to have a backup, fallback position. I always felt that, well, I'm just going to go and just do it and see what happens. Sometimes I had to do some gigs that I didn't particularly want to do, but it was still playing my instrument, and I always figured that I could take something positive away from even a relatively negative musical experience. But, you need a lot of tenacity to hang in, and that's important. Like when I see young people, I say, when someone will ask me a question, like if I'm doing a clinic or something, they'll say, they'll talk about the realities of the music, jazz music business, quote unquote. And I say, well, if you have to ask that question, you shouldn't do it. Jazz music is only for people who just can't, who have no choice. It's just something that they have to do. So if you have a choice, take the other thing, because it's not for people who are not totally committed. And on the other hand, don't let anybody tell you can't do it, because it's like you have to give it a shot, and just otherwise you spend your whole life regretting what you might have done or could have done. And so the situation is, it's an interesting situation, and I'm happy. It's not happy, but I'm glad I'm not starting out now, because I see it all around me how difficult it is, and what the demands are, and what the emphasis is. It's hard to be a pure musician now.
Isn't that part of the reason why these proteges of yours, have chosen other paths, because they don't feel hope? I mean, you were being regenerated on a nightly basis, whether it was Philly Joe or or these other guys that Don Friedman, they were filling you with this. It was a consciousness thing. It was the idea that there was hope, that if you kept doing what you were doing, you were going to be just fine. And now that doesn't seem to be good enough anymore because of these extracurricular demands, like what you're supposed to say and how you're supposed to dress, and it, like you said, it's more staged. And that
well, if you look beautiful, if you look like a fashion model, and you can play some music that has some kind of appeal, commercial appeal, and then you can be marketed, and you're a product. But to be, good thing about New York is like there's still places you can go. There's a club called Smalls downtown, and they have music pretty much like from the late afternoon on. And a lot of young players playing. I play there every once in a while because it's nice to play in a place that feels more like the old days.
I get it.
There,
I get it.
Blowing, just playing, not making any real bread, but really playing hard and trying to reach some young people, get them inspire them somehow. But jazz is a music for. It's not. It's always been a minority music in a sense, but we can't. We just have to make sure that the music is vital, and we don't give in to all the pressures to be superficial. And let's try to, and we'll always have an audience. It'll be limited, but it'll be fine. And then there's the whole world, the world audience, the new markets in Eastern Europe, and
right, exactly,
Asia. Pretty soon, China. I was in China. They had a jazz club in China, actually in Beijing even, and so there is hope, and you just do the best you can. A lot of musicians now earn a fair amount of their money from teaching.
Exactly.
And in New York, it's cool because it makes the institutions a little bit stronger, and people can survive. I'm not much into that, but I'm still worried about working on my low B flat and
keeping your chops up. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, trying to get my flute to sound better, and that kind of stuff. So that's what I do.
Hey,
I guess
I two guys who are just huge people that I feel in my spirit. I shouldn't just say they're just two of a few. I feel a lot of guys that are, they're talking with the spirits right now, and one of them is Woody Shaw, and I wasn't sure if you ever had a chance to play with Woody.
Well, yeah, I played with Woody, and not in a small group situations much, maybe once or twice, but I played with him. Well, also in Clark's band, we played together in one of Clark's big bands. Also, did a tour with George Gruntz way back, and so Woody, Woody had a difficult life, but he was.
I just found out recently that he actually had a visual impairment. I think he had RP or retinitis pigmentosa, something like that. I'm a teacher of the visually impaired, and I know that was one thing that sort of left him a little bit scarred. But I never understood it, Lew. I for a long time, I listened to Freddie Hubbard, and I love Freddie. I mean, still love Freddie, but this whole mission that I've been on started with Woody Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't care. He didn't care.
Woody used to pick my reeds out for me, man.
Oh my God!
I'm always trying out reeds, the saxophone reeds, and when he would say, "That's the one," that's the one. I said, "Okay, if you say so," because he could hear. His ears were very tuned, so, because he was really visually impaired. He could hardly see, and so he was. He could pick out the reed that had the most resonance, whatever. So
he really did have very limited vision, even as a youth.
Yeah, so he was very helpful, and he was like, I always felt he was on my side. I had a nice relationship with him because, I remember playing in Nice in the old days. He used to have all kinds of mix and match band set up. I was playing with somebody, I think it was with Shelley Mann and Pierre Michelot and John Lewis or something. Pretty good band. And Woody, I saw Woody, he said, "Yeah, man, people were coming up to me, who's that guy? Who's that guy?" And Woody said, "I know, it's Lew Tabackin, I can tell him anytime."
Wow, he just knew it from sound.
Yeah, I mean, because, when people don't know who you are, they can't identify you.
But then, boom, he says it, and it continues to give it's that indigenous, it's the regeneration, the idea that he says it, and it lends credibility to you, even though you don't necessarily need it, but he heard it, and he was able to spread that, and he did it to guys on both coasts, and that was the, I was promoting a show on Thursday in South Central, and I saw it was at a cafe across the street was the World Stage, which was Billy Higgins' old club.
Mm-hmm.
And by all accounts, Billy was he left us before I had a chance to track him down, but he was a beautiful cat, and I know that you got out there, and I just want you to talk about your relationships and your collaboration with John and with Billy. When you were out there, how'd you get to know them, and talk about that special band there?
Well, what happened was I moved to Los Angeles, and I wasn't that happy with, my musical experiences. I didn't, to be honest, most of the drummers felt like they had a negative energy and didn't have a joy in their playing. Or I never felt, when I played with some band, I felt like it was them and me. It was like kind of like, I didn't feel like, I just didn't feel natural. So John Hurd brought Billy over to my place. And I had a little house in North Hollywood, and we played. And after about 4 bars, I said, "Oh wow, it's not me, it's them." I feel like I'm at home. Billy was the greatest. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not the right. Compiness is not the right word, but he's the greatest collaborator in the history of jazz, in a sense, because he played exactly right for you at the time. His dynamics were perfect. He balanced his energy off of your energy. He knew the perfect ratio between his intensity and your intensity. A friend of mine played a date with him once, and I said, "Hey, how'd it feel to play with Billy?" He said, "Well, I expected more energy." I said, "Well, look, man, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
He plays off of your energy.
Wow.
If you don't have energy, he's not going to kick your ass. He's not that kind of drummer." And Billy, playing with Billy is like heaven. I mean, it's perfect. And I remember we did a month tour with him and Charlie Hayden. That's before Charlie became a big star. And I mean, every night was perfect. There wasn't one night where he felt like, well, he's not having a good night or he's down or whatever. Every night was a joy. I mean, I've never experienced that since, that kind of consistently musical, swinging reality, creative reality. I mean, I could hear the harmony when he played the drums.
Dude, you got to stop because I'm getting too emotional right now. All right.
Okay.
It's really cool, man. Because when I talked to Carl Burnett. Who's a great drummer as well, and he, he told me that it could be the most negative thing in the world, but Billy always had a smile on his face too. It was just kind of
Billy was all music, and it was his whole life, and he was that was a great part of my life, playing with him. We did my second trio album was my first, kind of paved the way for what I'm doing now with John and Billy. It's called Black and Tan Fantasy.
I have that album. It's an amazing album on a great record. What was the record label that it was on?
Well, it was a homegrown label. It was called Ascent. It was our own label, basically. Toshiko made this label, and it was really. And then it came out. It came out in Japan on another label, but the original one was on this kind of brownish cover.
No, I have it at home. Wait, and who was playing bass on that album?
John was playing bass.
Was John Hurd on that album?
Yeah.
Holy cow! Now I'm really tripping.
I remember we played I wanted to play After You've Gone really fast,
Mm-hmm.
and I played it, and we played it, and Billy said, "Come on, let's do it one more time." I said, "We can do it better." Usually you go on a date and guys just want to get out. They want to. "Oh, that's great, man. I'll see you. Goodbye."
Right.
But Billy, we kept on doing it, and did it about 3 times. It's really fast, and it really came out great. If I listened to it now, I'd probably be depressed because it was pretty good.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean.
And then after we finished, my fingers, where I could feel the muscles in my fingers, I could feel that they were, when you lift weights or something, you feel that kind of good feeling when your muscle is strained. It's like, wow, if I did this every day, man, can you imagine doing that every day? But Billy was he was just pushing it, well, we can do better, we can do better, we can do better. And it was, I mean, you don't meet too many people like that who are just about the music. You know, it's just not about economics or anything.
Talking with Lew Tabackin. In our remaining minutes, I'm sure people ask you all the time, well, how did you and Toshiko meet? You know, and I actually have a different question. I want to know where your head was at and where you were at emotionally before she came into your life, and whether you thought that was. I want to know where you were at before you met her, and then how your life changed after you met her.
Well, it takes a long time. I mean, where I was at was just survival. I mean, like, I was so preoccupied with, you know, trying to get better and doing my thing every day. You know, I'd get up whenever I did, practice my flute forever, and then play the tenor and go out, try to play or have a gig. That was my world. I didn't have a lot of room for too much else. I hang out a little bit, and that was about it. I met, you know, Toshiko, and I met her in Clark. I told you about that Clark Terry All-Star Band, and she was subbing for Don Friedman, and she was looking for a tenor player to do a concert that Joe Farrell was supposed to do, but he canceled, and she heard me play, and she didn't. So she called the contractor. She said, I found a guy who went on my gig, and blah blah blah. And she described me, and he said, "Oh, I was telling you about that guy, you know, blah blah blah." So that's how we met. Then I canceled her gig too. She had a town hall concert. I canceled it, and I went on the road with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis, like with Joe. So that's how we started out. And then we just did, like, she had a couple small group gigs. We used to rehearse, and we started to hang out. You know, one thing leads to another, blah blah blah, and that's you know.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful because I mean I guess, you know, I know we need to hash that idea out a little bit more, but you know, I just would say, Lew, that you know, to me, you've had such an amazing career, and you and your wife in collaboration have done so much to continue to try to make good music for all different types of people in all different types of countries. I just tell you, man, I want to see you down in Tucson at some point, because it'd be great to have your sound down here.
Yeah, well, one of these days, you know, like, people ask me questions, like, you know, because and I just.
We got about 30 seconds.
Okay, well, you know, I'm still trying to get it right, and I will retire when I get it right, and hopefully I'm better today than I was yesterday, and tomorrow I'll be better than I am today, and that's basically where I'm at.
Lew Tabackin, thank you for being a part of the Jake Feinberg Show, my friend.
Okay, nice talking to you, and keep it going, man.
All right, brother.
Bye.
This is the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll be back next week on KJLL 1330 The Jolt.
Local talk at its best.
Real talk is what this is.
AM 1330 KJLL, South Tucson.
CNN
News. I'm Sam Litzinger. The chair of the National Governors Association says federal officials think state governments will be able to pick up some of the slack if there's a national default. They should forget it.